Hey, team, welcome back to another incredible episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and I am joined today by Mr. Tim Bucher. He is the CEO and co-founder of Agtonomy. We're getting into physical AI today. So I'm going to have him define that in a little bit. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But I was just reading through his bio here this morning, and he has got a rich history from starting a farm in Northern California that is still to this day a very successful vineyard. Started that when I don't even know if he was in high school. I don't think he had time to go to high school with all the things that he was doing. He's had multiple successful businesses and exits, and a lot of, we're talking like olive oil, we're talking vineyard, Trattori Farms is what it's called up there, and a lot of tech stuff in here. So this is going to be an interesting interview. This is going to be fun. Tim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Mark. Great to be here with you.
Excited to get into it. You get the same opening question everybody does, though. What does it mean for you, Tim, to be intentional?
It means to think. And one of the things I always coach folks who I work with is to, when they're asked a question or when they have to make a decision, is to just pause and think for a second, what it is you're trying to do. And it's just a reminder to have that thoughtfulness in your decisions, in your responses to team members. And I think it's really important, right? A lot of times, folks think, oh, I got to just like move quickly and fly by the seat of my pants. But I think it really means being thoughtful, and that starts by pausing and thinking. And that can be just a nanosecond or two. It doesn't have to be a long period of time, but it's really amazing what happens when you do that.
Absolutely. I dig it. I agree. One of our, there's 3 Ds in our definition of intention, and the first one is deliberate. So pausing to listen, pausing to think just a little bit, very much in the cornerstone area of what we think intentional leadership looks like. So good answer. Thanks for doing it. Man, tell us about yourself and tell us about Agtonomy. Take whichever angle you want to go first, because we're going to spend the next half hour pulling it all apart anyway. So let's take whichever one of those feels good for you.
Okay. Well, people tell me I'm kind of an unusual person because I have 2 main vectors in my life that have been very big parts of my life. And one is agriculture. As you mentioned in the opening, I've had my own farm. I was born and raised a farmer, and then I started my own farming operation, yes, when I was in high school at the age of 16. But then the other thing is that I accidentally got into high tech. I did my undergraduate work at UC Davis, and I went there for agriculture, accidentally took a computer course, and it changed my life. I found I consider myself the luckiest person in the world because I had this agriculture passion. And then when I found this high tech, I thought, oh, I have to give up, or people normally think you have to give another passion for this new passion, but I didn't do that. And I kept both passions going and growing for decades, having my farming operation in Northern California, while at the same time being in Silicon Valley, working for some incredible entrepreneurs, historical entrepreneurs like, Steve Jobs twice, once at Next and once at Apple. Bill Gates acquired one of my companies and worked for him, and Steve Ballmer, and then Michael Dell acquired another one of my companies. And so I've had this kind of parallel world between agriculture and high tech, and I kept them separate for decades, but I finally brought them together with Agtonomy, which has been one of the most exciting things I've ever done in my life. And I think it's one of the greatest companies that I've ever started or been a part of. So that's a little bit about me. I'm a tech and ag guy, or an ag and tech guy, I should say. It leads with ag.
Well, it's the perfect time because several of the interviews that I've had lately have started to kind of cross into where we're talking a little bit more about that, and we're doing a little bit of tech now, some AI driven performance management stuff. through that matches up with our business and what we're about. So I'm super interested in it, and I always feel like I'm just a little bit on the bleeding edge when it comes to the agriculture industry. So I'm excited to talk to somebody who I know knows more about this stuff than I do. So what is Agtonomy? Let's start with that.
So Agtonomy actually came out of my own farming operation, where I was seeing the writing on the wall with Trattori Farms in terms of its future with the rising costs and the lack of a workforce.
Mm,
The workforce is vanishing in agriculture. For your listeners who may not know that, it's hard to find skilled labor to work in these industries like agriculture and construction and other, dirty job kind of industries.
yeah.
And so, being an engineer, I had automated everything on my own farm except for one thing, which was the field work. And about 6 years ago, I decided to build a little prototype. Actually, my son helped me. It was kind of fun. And it worked better than I could have ever expected. I built an electric autonomous tractor and showed it to my colleagues in Silicon Valley. And they said, hey, let's start a company. You know, look at this data where all the growers are hurting right now. And, things aren't looking better for the future, too, when it comes to, a skilled labor workforce.
Yeah.
And so what Agtonomy does is we focus on the software inside of smart machines designed and manufactured by tier one equipment manufacturers.
Hmm.
And we don't build robots and we don't build tractors, we don't build retrofit kits. It's really about accelerating the digital transformation of these tier one equipment manufacturers to essentially build into their tractors and equipment skilled labor features, given what's been happening in the industry, given that lack of workforce. So we are what we call a physical AI company for
Hmm.
these industrial markets, such as agriculture, is where we started. Yes.
Yeah. Amazing. What would be a skilled labor feature to help us get our heads around that?
Being able to operate a tractor while also at the same time controlling actuators to turn on and off certain parts of an implement that is attached to a tractor, right? A lot of people think of autonomy as navigation, and nobody drives a tractor from point A to point B and thinks that's useful, right? Nobody goes tractoring. People use tractors to do certain work.
Hmm.
And so what we do is basically not just do the navigation through very high value crops, but also do the workload, whether it's spraying or mowing or disking or seeding or underplant cultivation,
Hmm.
and doing that in such a way that the job gets done as top priority, because
Yeah.
farmers don't really care if you navigate from point A to point B, and if you didn't do the job right, you can kill the whole crop if you sprayed incorrectly or if you
Right.
damaged your orchards while you were going through them. So it's really the skilled operator, tractor driver, and implement manager. So it's really looking at a solution of certain jobs and getting those jobs done.
That makes sense.
And yeah, we support a lot of different implements right now. So we have about 200 in our catalog, and it's growing every week.
Amazing. So an example, I mean, I would think one thing that's getting a lot of seems like press right now. V- just so you know, the bulk of our folks listening to this show are probably going to be row crop focused. We're going to be very
Yep.
Midwestern based in our downloads. Not that we have global downloads. So thank you to whoever's listening from wherever you're listening in the world. But we're going to be concentrated in the Midwestern United States because that's where I came from and that's where a lot of our base is from. And so when we like the one of the big things that's getting um, awareness now would be like the See and Spray by John Deere. I think that's one of their big things. So I don't know if you guys participate in that, but would that be an example of where we potentially would have actually some sort of an AI not only navigating a sprayer through a field, but then also executing on the spraying itself?
Well, the See and Spray, if you will, is a very sophisticated implement attached to a
Mhm.
tractor.
Mhm.
And currently, it's predominantly driven by humans that are in that tractor.
Right. Yeah.
And so, autonomy creates the automation of the tractor itself
Yep.
in terms of driving through the fields. Now, row crops, where most of your listeners are from or are aware of, it's open field and you can see GPS. And to be quite honest, automation has existed there for decades.
I've been moving it for a long
Um,
time.
yeah, but for those who aren't familiar with permanent crops, and those are your fruit trees, your nut trees, your grapevines, etc. Certain companies call them high value crops because
Yep.
if you and I took out 10 stalk of corn, it's not that big of a deal. But if we took out one citrus tree, it's like thousands of dollars, right?
Yeah.
And so you're operating in a very constrained environment, literally, an inch away from a high value crop. And
Hmm.
the technology to be able to do that didn't really exist until, the last 7 years or so. Because you need a
Sure.
lot more compute, you need a lot more sensors to be able to, do this safely and precisely.
Yeah.
So that's what Agtonomy focuses on is the vehicles that are operating in these more complex environments.
Yep.
And for the listeners who aren't aware, about 80% of all of our fruits, vegetables, nuts is from the three western states in the United States.
You bet.
The Washington, Oregon, and Californias, which is where Agtonomy predominantly operates.
Beautiful. Super cool. It's super interesting. I'm just trying to make it um, relatable to the folks who, for the most part, think about row crop. I'm interested in all of them because we cover the full breadth and depth of all of it on this show in different ways, um, and so I think it's fascinating
Yeah.
what you guys are doing in that arena, especially, and I know especially you guys that are in the fruit and nut and grapes and all these things like in this production really struggle with labor, even more so.
Yeah.
And we struggle with it in the Midwest and around the country, but I mean, it's more labor intensive, right? So
Exactly. I
do
mean,
you,
that's the thing, Mark, is you and I can farm, probably a few hundred acres of,
mhm,
soybeans and wheat and, corn, but the two of us would struggle with even 100 acres of, permanent crops. So it
right.
takes 3 to 5 times more labor. There's 3 to 5 times more equipment that's used. So it's a different ball game, but one that automation is even more conducive to because of those challenges that exist in those permanent crops.
To be clear, I struggled with 2 cherry tomato plants in my backyard last year, so so I'm
Yeah,
not bragging on any specific skill
yeah,
sets as a grower over here. But, so I think what's, do you have any way of, like, sort of getting your hands around, like, how helpful this can be in terms of being able to, does one machine replace 5 people that you can't currently get because we deported a bunch of them and we need, we need help, right? Or anything like that. Do you have any way to sort of like quantify like what we're capable of here?
yeah. I mean, our customers are citing some pretty big, savings and expenses
Yep.
if they could even hire the people. But one of the unique things about Agtonomy is from day one, we've always operated one person can supervise multiple vehicles. So it's a one to many kind of user experience. Think of it as a fleet manager, but now instead of being on a tractor, you can be in your Ford F-150 in the middle of the field, and with your smartphones or your tablets,
Yep.
see all of the vehicles, what they're doing, what their status is. If you need to go meet them at the diesel tank to fill them up, because we monitor all of that.
Yep.
Um, and so it sort of takes the existing labor and upskills them. It makes their work much safer and healthier.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, for your listeners, agriculture is a pretty
Yeah.
dangerous occupation. And in permanent crops, you have rolling hills, very different, and tractor rollovers are very common, and that's
Mm.
where most fatalities come from. So if you can get the operator, out of the vehicle, it's not only safer, but it also is healthier too, with certain sprays and whatnot that are used commonly in all kinds of crops.
Yeah. Fascinating. Um, where I'm there's so many things going through my mind as you talk about this, and we don't have enough time to answer all the questions that I could possibly come up with for you because I'm a very curious person as it pertains to this arena. But I'll start with this. So, I mean, this morning, I mean, so I have I acquired a mini PC over the last few days. Bought one off of the gentleman who's working on becoming my son-in-law. He had an extra one, so for $350, he sold me this little mini PC with a whole bunch of memory on it. And so I took all my little AI agents and I threw them in there, and it's spinning up all kinds of sub agents. And I have an entire team
Yeah.
of of agents like that basically operate like people on a team, and I train them just like I would train people on my team. um, and they do things. I have one that's
Yep.
working on a Facebook ad campaign right now that's learning how to do Facebook ads so that we can monitor our advertising and all that good stuff in the background. And historically, that's something I would have to outsource that to a company because I don't have time to do it. At least $4 or $5,000 a month before even ad spend.
Right.
you know, and now I'm cutting that. I've got another one that's learning our writing styles that helps to craft the emails and the things that are super time intensive and over it. And this is just office job stuff, right? You
Right.
know,
Right.
um, and so in the same kind of way, I'm putting context around this. You're taking the same concept and applying that to the field,
Yeah.
and
And so,
you almost have like a person who's like a general contractor managing a fleet of machines and agents doing work in the yeah.
correct. But the agents,
Yep.
in the case of what we do at Agtonomy, are physical agents,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
You
That's the
have
big difference.
agents that are doing, advertising optimization and things like that, sort of what a human can do in their brain, right?
Mhm.
But what we're doing is we're taking AI, putting it on a physical thing like a tractor, and all the decision making. Well, first of all, the environment can be, um, there's a perception of the environment that the software that's running on the tractors has, and then the physical agents can make decisions, behavioral decisions about what to do next in terms of
Mhm.
what they're seeing. So, right now the term physical AI is sort of a hot category, probably the hottest,
Yeah.
because of the impact it can have to our global society, right? In getting work done and feeding the world and building the world and moving the world, which are huge multi-trillion dollar, markets.
Yep.
Um, and so it's very analogous to what we've been experiencing recently with, AI agents, but now they're physical and they
Yeah.
get work done. And with growers, growers don't want data, and they don't necessarily just want, analytics from the data. They
Mhm.
ultimately are being challenged more than anything today by, not being able to get the work done. And so Agtonomy is solely focused on that part of the equation. We are a get the work done physical AI company, right? We're helping to create this new workforce
Yeah.
of physical agents that can do that for growers and for other industrial markets too.
Mhm. One of the things, by the way, I love that, and thank you for drawing the line in the difference between those two things because it is, it's not, now you're going to see it happening as opposed to sort of experience it. I experience the benefit of my proposal writing process has gone from 5 hours per proposal to 5 minutes.
Right.
Okay. I
Right.
experience that from a time gain. Like I get that time back. I can do other things
Yep.
with that time. But now where I'm actually going to see somebody out there doing or a thing, not even a person. I'm going to see something out there doing the thing and
Yeah.
accomplish the
No,
task.
exactly. And,
Yeah.
and and it's very similar to what you just said, which is you have
Mhm.
now more time to get other things done, right? And so growers take their existing labor, and now one person can manage a whole fleet, as I was saying earlier. And so, in a way, you're cloning your workforce, right? You're getting
Yeah.
more. It's not that the tractors are going faster. I mean, they are going just as fast, if not faster, than a human can do. But it's
Mhm.
not like 5 hours to 5 minutes, right? It's five
Right.
hours to
Yeah.
4 hours, let's say. But
Mhm.
now you are freed up to do other things. And
Yeah.
one of the biggest challenges for farmers is just having time in their life.
Yeah.
I grew up a farmer, and my family never took one family vacation. I grew up a dairy farmer, so cows
Yeah. Of course.
don't sleep, right?
Makes sense.
Or
Yeah.
I mean, you
I
have
can
to
relate.
milk them twice a day, and so we could never have the whole family gone from the farm. But, this kind of technology and this physical workforce that can now be available to growers can improve the quality of life that they have, and they can spend more time with their kids or, planning other things. So it
This
really
is
does,
mhm.
create more time in a person's life.
This is really my number one hope from all of the innovation that we're living through right now. Really, I mean, this is another you're literally living through another industrial revolution in a way like we heard about or read about in our history books at the turn of the last century in the from 1800s to 1900s, right? We learned about
Right.
that in history class. Now we're actually living through one, and I think you need to pay attention and listen to podcasts like this and pay attention to people like you and what you're doing, because there are people that are on the bleeding edge of this and they're leading the way, and they're going to be the ones who really form the world that we end up living in, for the next 100 years
That's right.
or so.
Yeah.
One thing, yeah, wanted to just touch on this really quick around um, the the use of technology this way. There are going to be those that are going to feel threatened, and they're going to say, "It's going to take my job." I happen to be in a complete opposite camp of this, but I'm interested. What do you say to those who are thinking these things are going, they're taking our jobs. What are we going to do? Where are all the jobs going to be? Those, the scarcity mindset folks. What do we say to them?
Look, in industrial markets like agriculture, construction, warehouse logistics, land maintenance, things like that. Um, I used to hear that a lot 5 years ago when we first started. I don't hear it as much anymore because I think people are realizing, oh, they don't actually want to work in those jobs, right? I met Mike Rowe recently.
Mhm.
He
Yep.
used to do a show called Dirty Jobs,
Yeah, yeah.
and he's like, "Wow, you're like helping to do dirty jobs that nobody else wants to do." And I'm like, "Exactly, right?" So I think there is a good amount of education that has taken place. I've certainly done a lot with regulators too, with labor
Mhm.
unions as well, where they realize, look, the next generation is not going into this. I mean,
Mm,
I don't know if you know this, but the average age of a farmer is almost 60 years old in the United States. The average age of a farmer in Japan is almost 70 years old. That's the average age.
mhm.
In construction, the silver tsunami phenomenon, which is where all these skilled operators who've taken years to perfect how to be one with an excavator and work
Yeah.
magic, it's like they're dancing, right? As 10 of them retire, only 2 new come in.
Mhm.
So, it's a real big issue, and the only way to survive is to innovate with these kind of new workforces and upskilling of existing workers to be able to now manage a whole fleet. And it's kind of neat because we have a lot of customers who've taken their existing non-English speaking employees, and they love this, right? They're learning a new task and they're doing it in a safer way. And they're not, sucking on dust all day and heat and all
Yeah.
the other things that, growers in the Midwest often know very well about, as do
Mhm.
growers in other parts of the world. So it's kind of, you said it earlier, it's like this, industrial revolution. But if you think about these industrial markets that have gone through an industrial revolution with all kinds of mechanized tools, those industrial industries are now going through another industrial revolution that is not mechanized, but it's technology based. So
Yep.
it's the technology revolution of the industrial revolution.
Right.
And it is so exciting for everyone because everyone wins, right?
Yeah.
Even though there are some that think, oh, there's jobs being taken away. How many times have we said that with every inflection point with new technology? All right. Just
Mm,
look through the centuries. Oh my God, trains are going to take, stagecoach drivers away, or whatever
yeah.
jobs away, but
Yeah.
yet it opened up new markets. Right.
Right.
So I think it's exciting. I think the growers are being educated, and let's be honest, they're also desperate right now because
Mhm.
they can't get the labor. So
Yep.
the only way to survive is to innovate our way out of what I call Farmageddon.
We're really in the perfect storm of everything right now, with all of from whether it's from tariffs to fertilizer issues and getting the Strait of Hormuz being closed at the moment. I don't even know what's going on at the moment. It's back
Yep.
and forth every day. Just
Immigration policy, as you cited
immigration.
earlier, right?
Yep. Yep.
Yep.
I mean, there's just so many things
And
happening. And so, yeah.
and then Mark, and one other part of the perfect storm you mentioned is not just the negative things, but the perfect storm also includes technology advancements that are
Hmm.
now at the point that can do these physical agents, that can do this, real work for people. I mean, a lot of your listeners have heard about humanoids and the coming of humanoids, and those are still a ways off. But we're creating sort of application specific humanoids, if you will, and they take the form of tractors and other things. So you're not changing the paradigm
Yeah.
uh, very much for growers. As a matter of fact, you're keeping it, very similar. And that's
Hmm.
important, especially when it comes to how they purchase or lease or finance tractors through incredible companies, like your Kubotas and Bobcats and CNHs and others of the world.
Of course.
And that's something that we felt was really important too at Agtonomy, as in looking at this perfect storm. How do you go to market in a way that actually gains traction?
Hmm. God, yeah. Well, and I mean, there's plenty of traction to be gained because of the perfect storm. Everybody's now open to solutions, and this is a very solution oriented thing.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
solution. It's a situation looking for a solution, and companies like yours are bringing those to market right now. And
I had the pleasure of working for Steve Jobs twice, once at Next Computer and once at Apple. And when he came back to Apple, Apple was in dire straits. I mean, they were in bad shape. It was probably one of
Mhm.
the lowest valued companies at the time. And when he came back, he basically said, "We're going to innovate our way out." And they went from one of the, you know, lowest companies in the world to one of the most valuable companies in the world. And I think it's a very similar thing when times are tough, when things are down. The
Mhm.
best thing to do is to embrace new ways of working. It's sort of, desperation is the mother of all innovation, or whatever that saying
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Um,
yep.
but it's so true, and now more than ever for farmers, for construction operators, for landscapers, warehouse operators alike.
Right.
It's we got to innovate our way out.
I 100% agree. The same is happening in our business. Our business, we're an employee coaching business, and that's getting disrupted, right, as we speak. And so now it's but what's interesting is the human experience is becoming even more important, right?
Yeah,
But a lot of the things that we've done that originally were the innovative thing. By the way, the innovative thing was in 2014. We offered employee coaching via at the time Zoom didn't even exist yet. By the way, it was like WebEx, right? We
right,
if you
right.
remember what it was. And so, but we would offer a 2-day in-person training followed with 90 days of coaching. That was the innovation in employee development circa 12 years ago, for mostly agriculturally based companies, cooperatives and independent retailers and suppliers and so on and so forth. That's been who we've worked with for the most part over the last decade and a half. So that was the
Well,
innovation. And now,
yeah,
and going into through 2019, things were off the hook. Crazy people loved it. Attendance rate on our Zoom call, based coaching was like 90+%. Okay. For a
wow,
corporate training, which was unheard of. And precipitously now since COVID, since 2020, that number has gone down and down and down. Why? Because Zoom got
yeah,
overdone. We ended up with 8 Zoom meetings on our calendar every day, and people are literally getting frazzled in their brains, burned out because it's just another call. And so now it was no longer even though it was like the quality of our work has gone up because we've had to get more competitive from a quality standpoint, but the type of experience has become diluted. So we had to come up with another way to innovate our business, you know?
yeah. No, it's really interesting, and it
Mhm.
gets back to your point of the human touch perspective is becoming it's coming back again,
It
right?
is.
Because like one of the things we need right now are our leaders, and
Mm.
and we kind of with all the AI agents in the world and with all the technology and Zooms and whatnot in the world, we still need leaders. We
Yep.
still need thought leaders. We still need folks who basically provide a guiding light for others to follow. And
Hmm.
that cannot be replicated with AI agents, at least in my opinion.
Right.
And
Exactly.
it's really important because we cannot move the world forward without leaders. And by the way,
Hmm.
notice how I didn't say managers because
Yeah.
um, I, I always tell people like I'm the crappiest manager in the world, but I will
Yeah.
lead you and I will, provide a guiding light for you and then let you work your magic. But I'm not going to tell you every little thing to do.
Yeah. All right. So since this is the intentional leadership show, what working for Steve Jobs and was everything intentional? Was I mean we hear sort of the horror stories about he was was a very hard person to work with, drove a very hard line. Is this would you consider this to be intentional or is it just or more reactionary?
Well, I learned from a couple of really incredible leaders, Steve being one of them. And
Hmm.
the thing that I saw in Steve, and then I saw in Bill Gates, and then I saw in Michael Dell, and then I saw in Trip Hawkins, founder of Electronic Arts, that I also did a company with, was they all had a mantra, and and that mantra kind of helped focus their intentionality, if you will.
Mm.
So Steve was in everything that we would do, he would ignore like business optimizations for the sake of design. So for
Hmm.
him, his mantra was, it's all about design.
Gotcha.
And he was right. And that was kind of how he kept his intentional, you know,
Hmm.
leadership, if you will. It was maniacal too, by
Yep.
the way. Like there were
Hmm.
things that were on the bottom side of computers where, it would cost a lot to embed text in rubber. Made no sense financially, but he said, no, we're going to do it and we're going to spend that extra $100 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So he was very intentional in that way, and it really helped focus the entire company towards user
Yeah.
experience and product quality and just
Hmm.
design in particular. And then Bill Gates, he was maniacal about software. He would tell me all the time, Tim, it's all about software. The world runs on software, and he too was right. And then Michael Dell, it's all about costs. And
Hmm.
I think these leaders had their mantras that kind of kept the guiding light for the companies that enabled those companies at a very high level, be successful with those mantras.
Hmm.
Um, so so I think I've had I consider myself extra lucky for having worked for these incredible leaders, incredible entrepreneurs. And what I've done is I've taken the good from each and the stuff that I didn't think was that good,
Sure.
and kind of left that behind. So
Yeah.
uh, it's been a great adventure, and
So
I,
good.
I just continue to evangelize that with the companies that I do these days,
Yeah.
including Agtonomy.
It's so good. And that's the whole idea behind this show. I just interview people like you that have had some level of leadership in the industry, and we have all levels of leadership, not just CEOs. And
Yeah.
we get to learn. So now we're up over you're somewhere in the ballpark of interview 220. And
Wow.
so have this basket of knowledge around leadership and people and experiences and all these things. So now we're actually going through the data and we're able to create really cool products and programs uh, that are built
That's
off of the knowledge base that I've sat here for 220 hours interviewing people to get.
that's so awesome.
Yeah,
Hey,
and so
hey,
and I've done until this point, Tim. This is April 10th of 2026. We haven't done anything with it. We've just been sitting on it and sitting on it and sitting on it, and it feels like now is like the perfect time to start to bring it out. So we're gonna launch our first course here um, on intentional leadership based off
I
of our interviews coming
I,
soon.
I think that's such a great idea because, as I was saying earlier, we need leaders more than anything right now,
Yep.
in all kinds of industries. And I think that what you're doing can really help folks in that regard. And I think the intentional leadership is the most important part, right? If it's just leadership to be wild and crazy, no, you got to really have that focus.
Mhm.
One thing you didn't ask me is what's my mantra.
Yeah.
So I'll
What is
pretend
your mantra?
I'll pretend you asked me that.
Yeah. Let's
Um,
pretend.
so if you ask anyone on my team, like, what does Tim, say all the time? And I say, it's so yes, it's about design. Yes, it's about cost. Yes, it's about, software. Um, but I always say we're a show me company, show me, don't tell me. And
Mm,
it's really important in these industrial markets like agriculture, right, where you have to show growers that it can actually work in their operations.
yeah.
That's when they believe. That's when you get traction. And so it's not just something that has worked with other companies I've done in pure high tech environments
Mhm.
or on my own farm, but it really works well for these industrial markets. And I think our team is one of the best show me teams in the world, and can make things happen faster than I could have ever imagined in my life in the physical world. So it's
Yeah.
pretty exciting.
Beautiful. As you guys set to scale Agtonomy, we talked about this a little bit off the mic before we got into the show. As you guys set to scale, so what does that look like in your world? Is it talent attraction? Is it technology growth? What does scaling? What does the intentional scaling of a business like yours look like in 2026?
So the most important thing I think well, for an entrepreneur, my definition of an entrepreneur is somebody who wants to make impact. And for us, impact means penetration into creating value for our end customers. It's all about the
Mhm.
end customers. So for us, the intentional scaling is about increasing the number of happy customers, where our solutions work reliably and
Mm,
offer them significant savings. Or if it's not savings, but it always is in the end, it's to actually just help them get their jobs done to keep them around as an ongoing concern, right? Because
mhm.
that's what's happening these days is a lot of folks in agriculture are going out of business. And we believe we have solutions that can help them turn that around. So this
Beautiful.
is a very exciting year where, we have multiple tier one equipment manufacturers who have commercial autonomy enabled vehicles that are out there working in the fields, in the orchards,
Mhm.
in the vineyards, and it's not only exciting, it's a little bit. You get a little bit nervous too, right? Because you can't screw up, right? If
Yeah.
you screw up
Yeah.
while you're scaling stops.
Yeah.
So we're excited, but also have a little bit of anxiety at the same time.
Right.
But
Right.
that tension is always good, because then you really are more thoughtful. You really are more intentional about everything you're doing. Like we are in that phase of the company where we have to be more intentional than ever, because again, if we screw up, scaling stops. And right now, we just see a tremendous demand for these kind of solutions, given the perfect storm that is at play right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So good. I wish that we could go on and talk more and pry into these things. But as we bring it in for a landing, Tim, do you have a book or a resource for the audience that if you would say, hey, you've got to go to Amazon and order this right now, or you need to go subscribe to this podcast or this YouTube channel, anything that you would say, hey, definitely grab this?
This is a great question. So I do talks at universities to MBA
Mhm.
students and whatnot, and I always start with this question. I ask them, "How many of you read books on management and leadership?" And they all raise their hand, right? And I say, "Well, those books are all bullshit."
Yeah.
Oops, I'm sorry. Uh,
Yeah.
those
It's
books are
okay.
all. Those books are,
Yeah.
you have to really live the experience. You can get some guardrails and get some good tips here and there, but in the end, you really have to experience it. And so, I guess what I'm saying is there's great books out there, but don't think of each book as a Bible. It's just some
Yeah.
guardrail. You have to then experience it. And that's my advice for anyone when it comes to podcasts or books or anything in that realm.
Yeah. Very good. Well, I think,
But
research.
by the way, Mark, they keep inviting me back to do talks even after
We
I
keep
say that,
going.
because usually the
Are
professors are who wrote those books are in the room.
Okay, so let me ask you: are any of those talks recorded, available on YouTube? Can we go watch them anywhere? Do you have anything out there?
I think there's a lot of stuff that I've. I think you can go and
Well,
there's
here's
quite a
here's what we're
few
gonna do.
quite a
We're
few
gonna
videos.
so
All
one of
right.
our innovations in this new world, new market is a product called Jericho that we created. And
Yeah.
so what it does is it helps individuals and or companies create the growth plans. So if you think about growth plans inside of a company, it's usually a very painful process, and they're typically not done very well. And maybe they get done once a year. So we created a process that helps every company understand exactly in their company who in their company needs what training, and they get like a really incredible, totally personalized playbook. And if the things in their playbook, the capabilities that they're working to develop happen to line up with one of these resources, it assigns it. And so if there's something in Tim's mind that's captured in one of these videos, I want to make sure that Jericho knows about it, because it'll actually assign it to someone's learning plan.
Well, tell Jericho about a New York Times article that was written about my management and leadership style.
Perfect.
Um, it was a great article, and it talked about my uh, talked about my. I think it was entitled Monday Night Coaching or
Monday
something
night
like
coach.
that.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
we're gonna
check it
train.
out.
We're gonna
And
train it
and
up.
Adam Bryant was the writer, and he's written many
Okay.
books.
Yeah, I know.
And he's
I know his name.
yeah. So
Mhm.
I like his writings, and he did a story on me and my leadership style.
Beautiful. Wow. Well, it's not often that we have someone who has had your level of success within the ag and the tech side of things. We have a lot of successful ag people, and we've had some successful tech people, but rarely do they cross paths in such an intimate way, such as yours, Tim.
Oh,
So I greatly appreciate you sharing your breadth and depth of knowledge and teaching us about autonomy and agtonomy today. It's been fun.
awesome. Hey, it's been great talking to you, Mark. Thank you.
You bet.